there's a good chance you do not need more motivation. You do not need another inspirational quote. You do not need somebody yelling at you to get up earlier, work harder, push through, grind more, or become more disciplined. You may have spent years doing that. And if you are a man over 50, there's a good chance you already know how to push yourself. You have gone to work when you did not feel like it. You have taken care of people when you were tired. You have handled responsibilities when nobody applauded you. You have solved problems because there was nobody else to solve them. So maybe lack of motivation is not your problem. Maybe the deeper problem is this. You have spent years learning how to move forward without learning how to return to yourself. And that distinction has changed the way I understand personal growth. For many years, I believed progress meant movement. More goals, more discipline, more effort, more knowledge, more accomplishment. And there is nothing wrong with any of that. Motivation can be useful. Discipline is useful. Goals are useful. But eventually, I began noticing something. You can be highly motivated and still be deeply unsettled. You can be productive and still be reactive. You can accomplish things and still feel disconnected from yourself. You can look strong on the outside while your inner world is being controlled by stress, resentment, fear, pressure, and everybody else's expectations. And when that happens, more motivation does not solve the problem. It simply helps you run faster while disconnected from yourself. I began seeing this in my own life. I spent more than 25 years in law enforcement. That environment rewards action. Something happens, you respond. There's a problem, you deal with it. There's a conflict, you step into it. I learned to assess quickly and make decisions and move. That ability served me well. But what life has taught me since then is that not every situation requires immediate movement. Some situations require space. And there is a difference between hesitation and awareness. There's a difference between being passive and being centered. That difference took me years to understand. Because when you have been a responsible person for most of your life, doing something feels safer than simply being present. If there's a problem, fix it. If you're uncomfortable, change something. If you feel stuck, find another goal. If you feel empty, get busier. If someone upsets you, respond. We become very skilled at movement, but movement does not always mean alignment. Sometimes we are moving because we are uncomfortable standing still long enough to hear what is actually happening inside us. That is where the ideal of having a center became important to me. When I say center, I'm not talking about physical location. I am talking about an inner position, a place of awareness before reaction. A place where you can observe what is happening without immediately becoming what is happening. Someone says something disrespectful, your emotions rise. You feel the old response coming, but there is a moment, sometimes only a few seconds, where you can recognize, am I being triggered? And instead of automatically becoming the reaction, you can observe it. That space is the beginning of center. Or maybe something happens with money. Immediately, your mind starts racing. What if this happens? What if I cannot handle that? What if everything goes wrong? The problem may be real. It may require action. But the fear does not have to become your decision maker. You can return to center and ask, what is actually happening right now, and what is the clearest next move? That is very different from positive thinking. And I'm not talking about pretending that everything is okay. I am talking about refusing to surrender your inner authority simply because circumstances became uncomfortable. That is what I call the center gives you. It gives you somewhere to return. Think about this. If you do not have a center, where do you return when life shakes you up? Most of us return to habit. We return to conditioning. We return to whatever response had been repeated enough times to become automatic. Some men return to anger. Some withdraw. Some become controlling. Some shut down. Some overwork. Some drink. And some eat. Some scroll. Some start another project. Some immediately need someone else to change so they can feel better. We call these reactions personality, but sometimes they are simply patterns. And a pattern repeated for 30 years can feel like identity. That was one of the insights that became important to me. Just because the response is familiar does not mean it is who you are. There may be something underneath the response, something calmer, something clearer, something capable of choosing. And the practice is learning how to return there. That is why I no longer believe the answer to every difficult season is more motivation. Motivation says, come on, let's go. Center asks, before we go, who's going? Motivation says, take action. Center asks, from what state are you taking that action? Motivation says, push through. Center says, are you moving from clarity or from fear? Those are very different questions because two men can take the exact same action for completely different reasons. One man says no because he's angry. Another man says no because he is clear. One man leaves a situation because he is afraid. Another leaves because he understands his boundary. One man works hard because he feels worthless unless he succeeds. Another works hard because the work expresses who he is. From the outside, the behavior can look identical, but internally, they are living completely different lives. This is why the center matters. The center determines the quality of the action. And over time, I began developing a simple ideal around this. It's called its center edge. The center is the inner stability. The edge is your ability to engage life. Because there are two mistakes we can make. We can have edge without center. That looks like constant reaction, force, aggression, control, always needing to win, always needing to prove, always needing to push. But we can also have center without edge. That can become avoidance, passivity, using spirituality as an excuse not to speak, not setting boundaries, not confronting what needs to be confronted, not taking action because we want to remain peaceful. Neither one is complete. The goal is not to become passive. The goal is not to become aggressive. The goal is to become centered enough to use your edge consciously. That means I can be peaceful and still say no. I can love and disagree with you. I can understand your perspective without surrendering mine. I can remain calm while making a firm decision. I can be compassionate without allowing myself to be mistreated. I can experience emotion without allowing emotion to take command. That is centered strength. And I believe many men need that far more than another motivational speech, because motivation eventually fades. It always does. You can watch an inspiring video tonight and feel ready to change your life. By Tuesday afternoon, you are dealing with traffic, bills, family, work, fatigue, disappointment, and whatever else life brings. The emotion disappears. Then what? If motivation was your fuel, you start searching for another dose, another video, another book, another podcast, another challenge, another goal. But when you develop a center, you are not dependent upon feeling inspired. You know how to return to yourself even when you do not feel particularly motivated. That creates something much more valuable than motivation. Consistency, not perfect consistency, centered consistency. You wander, you notice, you return. You react, you notice, you return. You get overwhelmed, you notice, you return. The word return has become very important to me because I do not believe mastery means never getting triggered. It does not mean never becoming afraid. It does not mean never losing your patience. It does not mean you float around all day in perfect peace. That is unrealistic. Mastery is recognizing sooner, returning faster, and choosing more consciously. Maybe years ago, you stayed angry for 3 days. Now you recognize what is happening in 3 hours. Eventually, it becomes 30 minutes, then 5 minutes. Then sometimes you catch the reaction before it leaves your mouth. That is growth. Not because you became a different human being, because you became more aware of the human being you already are. So I want to give you a very simple practice. The next time something disturbs you, do not immediately ask, what should I do? First ask, where am I right now? Am I centered? Am I afraid? Am I angry? Am I trying to prove something? Am I reacting to what is actually happening, or am I reacting to an old story? Then take a breath. Not 10 minutes, not a full meditation. One conscious breath. And ask a second question. From what center do I want to respond? For me, I have increasingly tried to let the center be grounded in clarity, love, and gratitude. That does not mean every response sounds soft. Sometimes love says yes. Sometimes love says no. Sometimes gratitude means appreciating what is present. Sometimes clarity means recognizing that something has run its course. The point is not what the answer must be. The point is that you are answering instead of your conditioning answering for you. That is the beginning of freedom. And this becomes especially important in the second half of life. Because after 50, many of us begin asking different questions. We have already spent decades proving we can do things. Maybe the next question is, from what consciousness am I doing them? Maybe the next level of growth is not simply becoming more productive, Maybe it's becoming more present, not accomplishing more things while abandoning yourself, but learning how to remain with yourself while you accomplish what actually matters. I think back to my younger years sometimes. There were situations where I believed strength meant having an immediate answer. Today I understand there is strength in the pause. There were times I believed leadership meant controlling the situation. Today, I understand leadership begins with governing yourself. There were times I believed peace meant absence of conflict. Today, I understand you can be more peaceful while standing directly inside conflict. That is the centered edge. And once you begin experiencing it, something changes. The world may not become less chaotic, but you become less available to the chaos. People may still push your buttons, but eventually you begin removing those buttons. Circumstances still change, but every change does not have permission to redefine who you are. And slowly, you begin discovering that your greatest power was never controlling everything around you. It was developing a place within yourself that you knew how to return to. So no, I do not believe you need another person screaming at you to become more motivated. You have probably been pushing long enough. Maybe what you need now is something deeper, a center, a place from which your strength can emerge without consuming you, a place where peace and power can exist together, a place where you can respond to life rather than constantly being pulled around by it. And if you are a man over 50, I want you to think about this question. Where in your life are you currently reacting instead of responding? Maybe it is your marriage, your children, your work, your money, your health, politics, a relationship, or simply the way you speak to yourself. You do not have to give us the entire story. Put one word in the comments. Marriage, money, work, family, health, whatever it is, because identifying the place where you lose your center is often the first step towards learning how to return to it. And if you know someone who is constantly trying to motivate himself but still seems restless underneath it all, share this video with them and subscribe to Living Enlightened with Dr. G. We are exploring what happens when a man stops spending his life trying to become someone else and begins learning how to live from the deepest part of who he already is. And remember this, motivation can get you moving, but your center determines where that movement takes you. You do not need to spend the rest of your life pushing harder. Maybe this season is asking you to stand differently. Find your center, keep your edge, and from there, take the next step.